So, right now, it feels like everyone is talking about Mika going live, finally, or waiting to see if US senators are about to give us real clarity around crypto. Or many people, it feels like, in my opinion, are still wondering whether these ETFs are actually going to move the market. But before we go down any of those roads, let's eat the food that's still sitting in the refrigerator first. Because some of the most important pieces of this story are not going to come tomorrow. They've actually been ready for years. And one of the biggest dishes that I think has been ignored is Bermuda. And here's the grounding fact of why I say this. Bermuda was the first country in the world to implement a full digital asset framework, and this was completely regulated. And this happened back in 2018. This wasn't theoretical, not proposed, not argued over, but fully implemented. The Digital Asset Business Act, or DABA or DABA, covers licensing of exchanges, custody rules, token issuance, tokenization, stablecoin frameworks, compliance, regulatory requirements, consumer protection, and operational oversight. Everything that Europe is still rolling out under MiCA currently. This is also everything the US still can't agree on. And here's the part I think a lot of people miss. The race for regulatory clarity already has a winner. We just haven't been paying attention. And the moment that this became fully apparent to me was at the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium in Jackson Hole, a room full of policymakers, regulators, and institutions. Along with Bermuda's premier, who wasn't there to just listen, he was actually there to teach, to explain how a small island pulled off what the biggest economies in the world still haven't yet: a complete, functioning digital asset regulatory system. And I want to bring in a line that he delivered on stage because I think it says everything to the point that I am wanting to make. Bermuda continues to be recognized globally as a leader in digital finance regulation. And that hits differently when you understand where he's sitting while he's saying it. It's at a US event with a US audience and US regulatory environment. That is still trying to figure out the definition of the word security in relation to this industry. It's one of those quiet truths the industry doesn't want to say out loud, in my opinion. The model the West is studying didn't come from the West. And while the noise online keeps circling price predictions and catalysts, the real architecture of this new system is forming between nations, not influencers. Because here's where the story stretches beyond the West. Bermuda isn't just lecturing Washington. They're also showing up at the ACTIF, and this is the Africa Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum, where digital trade, digital payments, and digital economy infrastructure are part of the official agenda. This is important for one specific geopolitical reason. We're watching the US slowly pull back from parts of Africa. There are the AGOA trade uncertainties. And by the way, the AGOA is a US trade program that lets certain African countries export goods to the United States without paying tariffs. It was created to support African economic growth by giving them easier access to the American market. We are also seeing other pullbacks by the US, with development funding being reduced, inconsistent policy engagement, and tariff structures reshaping priorities. What I've noticed is when a major power steps back, the space they leave behind does not stay empty. Something else eventually moves into that space. And in this case, Africa and the Caribbean have started turning towards each other, towards building their own corridors, their own alliances, their own settlement systems. And that makes this moment, to me, honestly, kind of thrilling. Because the West is trying to catch up at the moment, and the global South is preparing for a leap forward. And standing in the middle, accepted by the West and respected by the South, is Bermuda, a regulatory lighthouse for one side and a trusted partner for the other, a gateway between two very different futures. And inside all of that clarity and all of that positioning, there's a part of the story that doesn't get much attention, but I think it really matters. One of the first regulated digital asset projects built in Bermuda was, guess where? On the XRP Ledger, by a company called CrossTower, a Bermuda-based exchange that operates under the island's Digital Asset Business Act, or DABA. CrossTower partnered with Ripple to mint and trade NFTs on the XRPL. And let me slow this part down because this is where the meaning lives. NFTs are not the XRPL's innate purpose. The XRPL was built to be a multi-currency settlement ledger, a fast, low-cost final settlement system, a platform for issued assets and stablecoins, a bridge for fiat values, a predictable, regulatory-friendly network. So, the fact that Bermuda allowed XRPL-based NFTs under its strict regulatory clarity tells us something simple but extremely important. The XRPL is flexible, it's stable, it's compliant friendly, and it's enough to operate inside the world's first fully regulated digital asset environment. There's no hype, no hope, just infrastructure. There's a piece of this that really brings this whole thing into focus for me. The XRP Ledger supports something called issued currencies. It means any currency, dollars, euros, Jamaican dollars, Nigerian naira, stablecoins, tokenized deposits, can be represented on the XRP Ledger with built-in trust lines and move across the ledger with the same speed and finality as XRP. There's a piece of this I hadn't seen explained in a way that made sense until now. Issued currencies let the XRP ledger behave like a multi-asset settlement layer, not a speculative chain. It's the technical backbone for cross-border payments, tokenized fiat, CBDC structures, multi-currency digital trade, low-cost remittance flows, and exactly the kind of systems that African Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum are starting to experiment today. The same systems Bermuda already regulates with, and the same systems the West cannot agree on yet. This is why the XRP Ledger could even serve NFTs in the first place, because the ledger's asset issuance model is built into its DNA. It's the same architecture. So, here's the through line. The first country with real clarity, Bermuda, is teaching the West. It is also connecting with Africa and the Caribbean to build new digital corridors. And inside that clarity, the XRP Ledger. is already being used as a real world tokenization layer. Not loudly, not with hype, quietly, structurally, in the places that already have their laws in order. So everyone is watching Mika go live and Washington argue over last minute bills. And it's hard not to notice a lot of creators making noise about ETFs at the moment. That perhaps we haven't looked at the jurisdictions where the future is already functioning today. Clarity creates influence. And the jurisdictions that got clarity first are shaping the rails everyone else will eventually use. Sometimes the future doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly in the places we didn't think to look. So I'm not here to chase hype or predict tomorrow's candle. I'm here to translate the part of the system most people don't even know to look at, and to lay out the rails that are already built underneath the noise. If this opens something for you, please like, subscribe, and pass it on. It would mean a lot to me. And just another note, we're just getting started, and the story is bigger than just the price. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking a moment to slow things down. And until the next episode, see you next time.